Ephesians 5, verse 18. And the title of our message is, What Are You Talking About? Everybody's talking, but what are you talking about? Ephesians 5, verse 18. The Bible says, And be not drunk with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit. That is, two opposites here. You're either drunk with wine or you're filled with the Spirit. And you're not both at the same time. You can't be drunk with wine and be filled with the Spirit. You're filled with another spirit when you're full of wine. In fact, they call it spirits. Verse 19. Speaking to yourselves in psalms. Now, this tells you something. There are certain things that happen to you as you age. You mature and you become more like God intends you to be. As you get older, you start to groan. In Romans, he says you're supposed to groan. You're supposed to groan because that's yourself saying, I'm ready to get out of this body. And if you're not doing that, you're too comfortable here. Young people, they're comfortable here. They don't groan. They don't have any problems with this body yet. It'll come. Here's another one. Verse 19. Speaking to yourselves. You ever talk to yourself? Everybody talks to themselves. He says, here's what you should be saying when you're talking to yourself. So it's not a problem talking to yourself. It's a problem what's coming out of your mouth when you're doing it. He says, speaking to yourselves in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord. So it's okay to talk, but just make sure it's the right things. Verse 20, giving thanks always for all things. Ouch, ouch. You know, he said, every single thing you can give thanks for. There are no exceptions to that verse, and there's no fine print. There's no way you can come up with a way around it. There are some spots that you can come around that say, give thanks, in things or on things. No, this one leaves no exceptions. He says, always for all things. Ouch. Now, when you're talking to yourself, make sure what you're talking to yourself about is something that is thankful. You know, that changes your attitude and changes everybody's attitude around you. Christians should be happy. We shouldn't be miserable and moaning and complaining because we've got all the answers. Furthermore, we've been given commands to be thankful, always and for everything. So when our Christians show up, when we show up in a room, it should lift the spirit and the atmosphere because we've been practicing while we talk to ourselves. There was a old mobster who's known, in fact, not that old. He died, I think it was in 2005. He was known as the Odd Father. Not the Godfather, the Odd Father. Vincent the Chin Gigante is his name. And he was one of the most intriguing of the bosses of New York. What he did was he, for 30 years, ran this family ruthlessly, killing anybody that got in the way and, demanding his way. But what he did, the way he avoided the police and subpoenas was this. He acted crazy. He wore a bathrobe, disheveled hair, a 3-day beard, and he would walk up and down 2 or 3 blocks in front of his house. And then the mobsters that were having the meetings with him were the ones who would come along and help him walk up and down the street. And as they did that, he would mumble the information they needed back and forth. Pretty smart to act stupid. David pulled the same thing. He got caught, so he started acting like an idiot. The king says, hey, what do I need another madman around here? Get this guy out of here. Anytime a subpoena would show up, he would pull one of his tricks. He would check himself into an institution and act like he was real crazy, He was crazy like a fox. He got away with it for a while till Rudy Giuliani showed up. Everybody talks to themselves. He used it as a ploy to make people think he was crazy. It's not so crazy to talk to yourself. The Bible is full of people talking to themselves. From the beginning to the end, you find people speaking to themselves. You should be. You know, the first thing God told Adam to do, you know who made Adam in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word showed up and said, "Hey, Adam, I want you to come up with a bunch of words. Name all the animals." Man lives in a world of words. Your dreams, your thoughts, any picture you see gets translated in your mind into words. And you know what happens with words. When you get a backlog of words, they have to pour out somewhere. Your mouth. And so it'll happen while you're walking. It'll happen while you're doing whatever you do. You'll just start talking to yourself. They say talking to yourself is okay, but if you start arguing with yourself, there's a problem. I say I talk to myself sometimes because I enjoy a good conversation. That's right. Um, Out of the abundance of the heart, the Bible says that mouth will start to speak. And it's true. What you'll talk about is what you've been putting in there in abundance. So when somebody slips and says a curse word, they didn't slip. That's been in their heart in abundance. Because when you was jostled, that's what fell out. Hmm. So the question our message covers is, what are you talking about? I'll tell you what most people talk about is what you don't have. You know that occupies most conversations. I really just don't. I don't. If only, and I really need. It's all about what you don't have. Okay, that's a wasted conversation. You know, problems are actually the rich soil from which God grows miracles. So instead of focusing on the dirt, what you don't have, we need to focus on, I wonder what the greatest gardener known to man is about to grow, because there's problems. And he's a miracle worker, so that's where the miracle's going to happen. We should be expecting that to happen, but that's not natural to man. You know, it's perceived needs that makes man demanding. We can really be demanding. You know, I don't have and I really need. It's really because we saw somebody else have it. Look at it in Exodus chapter 15. Now, there's some things that we think are real needs, and they may or may not be, but when we have a perceived need, we start telling God, hey, there's a problem there. The problem is, usually we don't necessarily tell God, we tell our own ears first. We mumble and complain about it before it goes to God. Exodus 15, verse 23. And when they came to the Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? Now, we like to read that and tell off on those people, but think about it. You like water too, don't you? You're wandering around in the desert and there's nothing to drink. When you show up and find a cruel trick, it looks like there's a pool of water and you can't drink it. Wouldn't your mouth start complaining? Probably. You'd say that's a normal need. And God says what happened was they complain, they're murmuring. He didn't like that. Even though we would have looked at it and said, hey, that's a real need. If you can't meet this need, there's a problem. But he says, no, don't be murmuring about that. Okay, so water. You're going to need some water. If you don't have water, you start complaining. I did. I've been complaining for a couple of days now. We're about to run out of, I think I got the last water bottle. We need to go get more. I've known it. I've just been too lazy to go up to the store and get it. Water is a need. You need water. Okay, God says, I don't care if you do need it. Don't be murmuring about it. The next one is food. This is more of a man thing. Men need food. I think we need it more often than women. Food. Exodus 16. Exodus 16, verse 2. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots. I don't like the sound of either of those words, flesh or pot. And when we did eat bread to the full. He said right there, we were sitting around having all the bread we could eat, like Olive Garden or something. They fill you up on bread so you don't eat the real food. Uh, but they said, we're out here in this wilderness and we don't have any bread. We sure would like some bread. They need some food. Now, God's going to give them some. However, they're complaining and murmuring about it. They complain. Usually we complain to the wrong person. We complain to self first. You always appeal to who you think is the most powerful. And most people, it's their self, because they'll complain about it to themselves before they ever get it to God, if it ever goes there. It's a murmur. This and that and that. Complaint. Well, who are you complaining to? You're talking to yourself. So you think you're God. Let's talk to God. Verse 4. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, whether they will walk in my law or no. Now, God says, I had a problem show up on purpose just so they could complain and see me fix the problem. And then I'm going to sit back and now I'm going to test them. So with every miracle God does for us, count on it. It'll be back because he's using miracles to test us to see whether we trust him or no. Here's where it comes in. I don't have time to give you all these verses, but they're all through there. Just look up the word murmur and you'll find them all. What he's going to do is he's going to repeat these tests over and over. And every time the test repeats, it seems like the people forget he's the one who did this answer the last time. And they start murmuring again. Even though they should be believing, he said in our verse, whether they'll follow my law or no. Okay, if God is really going to supply all your needs like he's done all your life, then why do you think the next problem that shows up he can't handle? It's baloney, he can. Don't talk to yourself about it, talk to him. What are you talking about? Let's hope it's not what you don't have. The other thing that men talk about is this, what they do have. People love to brag about what they've got, how good they got it. I had not been around that very often. I went to Bible, in Pensacola. When I came down to Bible school, nobody had nothing, and everybody enjoyed it. We all just got together, and who cares, nobody's got anything, nobody expects anybody, and nobody's got anything to brag about, you're just who you are. However, it wasn't long ago I went on a trip, and when I was there, everybody was bragging about how much junk they had. And it turned me off. I was like, let me get out of here. I like being around that. I'm not used to that. Something about bragging about everything you got, that'll wear you out fast. It's as equally evil to complain about what you don't have as it is to brag about what you do have. Luke chapter 12. Luke 12, verse 16. Luke 12, verse 16. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? Send them to California. Verse 18. And he said, This will I do. Who's he talking to? Himself. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say unto my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall those things be which thou hast provided? Not good news. He's been speaking to himself and bragging to himself how great he is. There's a song, How Great Thou Art. Most people are looking in the mirror singing that. That's what this guy's doing. He's talking about how good he's a great businessman and he's done all this stuff and his barns are overflowing. He's gonna have to tear them down and build up bigger ones. And how great it is, and then he'll just be able to retire and take it easy. Um, the point of this story that Jesus is telling is this: don't talk about yourself in a bad sense or a good sense. Look down at verse 21. So is he that layeth up treasure for himself. Now, wait a minute. You're supposed to. You're supposed to be wise and take precautions, foresee the evil, and don't go fall in the ditch. He says, so is he that layeth up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. The problem was not that the man was rich. That's what God promised the Jews in the Old Testament, is if they'd follow his laws and his rules, he'd make them rich. That's a promise to Israel, the nation. Now, he says, the problem is this: a man can be rich toward himself and not toward God. If you cut God out of it, God will cut you out. He says, this night your soul will be required of you. I'll take back from you what I was donating to you. Wow. In James 4. James 4, verse 16. Basically, anything you can brag about's bad. The thing is not necessarily bad, but the bragging is bad. Don't be a bragger. James 4, verse 16. But now you rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. If you're bragging and boasting about something, count on it, God hears it. Usually we do it to ourselves. Now, when you're younger, it doesn't come out of your mouth because you've got more control than that. It just stays in your brain. But as you grow, you know what happens? You've built those thoughts up in your brain. They've been piling up in there, and pretty soon there's more of them in your brain than your brain can handle, and they start falling out of your mouth. Old people talk. And he says, watch out. Don't let what's coming out of your mouth be bragging. But you know what? That's what most people think about. Your dreams, who's the hero of your dreams? Probably not God. It's probably not your neighbor. More than likely, it's you. That's bragging. Psalm 52. Psalm 52, verse 7. Psalm 52, 7. Lo, this is the man that made not God his strength, but trusted in the abundance of his riches, and strengthened himself in his wickedness. It seems like this world is designed so that the wicked people make the money. It's those who want to follow the devil and what the devil can provide for them that seem like they have all the goodies. Well, God's not fooled by it. He's very aware of it. He says, if you don't make God your strength, the abundance of riches will be wickedness. You have one or the other. You have the abundance of God or the abundance of the wicked riches of the world. Proverbs 27. Proverbs 27, verse 1. Here's the most basic thing you can boast about. People brag about this one nonstop, and we do it all the time and don't even realize we've done it. He says, Proverbs 27, 1. Boast not thyself of tomorrow. What? You might not be here tomorrow. Don't be saying you're doing this or you're doing that tomorrow. You know, the world is set up in such a way you have got to promise something about tomorrow. That's of the devil. It's set up in such a way that, hey, what time are you going to be there tomorrow? Can you pick me up tomorrow? It's just about no way around it. But he says, don't be boasting about tomorrow. He says, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. God's the one that controls tomorrow. He says in James, we ought to say, if the Lord will, we'll do this or we'll do that. When I was growing up, you used to hear it all the time. Lord willing, we'll be doing this or we'll be doing that. And that's right. Now, that too can become just a pat phrase, and people don't actually mean it. It's just a filler word. But we should really mean it. And even if you don't say it in your mind between you and God, it ought to be, God, if you give me the opportunity to do this, and this is what do you want me to tell them about that thing they're asking about tomorrow? You know tomorrow, I don't. And so then be in submission to him, even if it's just in your mind. But he says the problem is people will start boasting, and their boasting starts falling out of their mouth. You know what the problem is when something comes out of your mouth? It doesn't just stay right there in the air. It enters somewhere. Words of the air are like a bird and they fly. They have somewhere they go rest. Your words are the ones that are important. We talked about, I like to talk to myself because I enjoy intelligent conversation. That's true. You think what you say is most important. If it comes out of your mouth, it was filtered through your brain, and that's the best one you got. Therefore, when it comes out of your mouth, it doesn't stay there, it goes back into your ear. Now you have two witnesses to confirm the thing you thought to begin with. And so you really believe it. So that's why it's very important what comes out of your mouth is the right things. Otherwise, you're preaching to yourself something wicked that's wicked. So what are you talking about? Well, most people are talking about what they don't have, and then some of them are talking about what they do have. Now, here's another one. Some people talk about what they could have. What they could have. Now, I'm gonna give you something positive here because it hadn't been so positive so far. The pig pen of life should propel you to humble yourself, not strengthen your self reliance. Luke chapter 15. Luke 15, verse 17. Luke 15, verse 17. We'll find the prodigal. He's um, stole all dad's money. He got daddy's credit card and ran to town and spent it all up. And then nobody had any handouts for him. He wound up in the pig pen. Here's what happens. And when he came to himself, verse 17, when he came to himself, he said, to whom? He said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? He wasn't speaking, I don't think, to any friends because he didn't have any. And he wasn't speaking to the pigs because the pigs didn't really care. He was obviously talking to himself. It says he came to himself. When he showed up at himself, they had a conversation. And here's the conversation they had. My father's servants have it better than I do right now. Verse 8, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. That's humility. And am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. That's the right attitude. The right attitude is if it's going to come out of your mouth and you don't see what you have as being what you could have been. Most people do that. I'm so and so years old today, and I thought by now I would have this or that. Baloney. If it's with God, then maybe. Ask God where you're supposed to be. If you're humble before God, He'll put you in the place He intends you. Now, for this man right here, I think it's wild. I would not have done this. He welcomes the boy back, and he does not tell the boy, you're going to be a servant. You're going to earn back all that money you stole from me. That's what we would do, and we'd have plenty of Bible to back it up with. But that's not what the man does. This man Jesus praises, even though he doesn't do what we think is fair. This man says, I'll even spend more on you than I've already spent. I'll go kill the fatted calf. Pretty good stuff. Psalm chapter 84. Psalm 84, verse 10. The reason he got all the goodies is because he said, I ain't worthy of nothing. I'll just go back and say, give me your lowest position. Humility means something in God's eyes. Psalm 84, verse 10. David says, for a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. Now, the reason he's saying that is it's because the wicked seem to be rich. He's looking around, and the wicked people seem to have all the goodies and the trinkets, and they get everything they want. He said, no, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of righteousness than to dwell in the tents of these wealthy, rich people that are wicked. And that's the right attitude. In James 4, verse 8, he says this, draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. That's the attitude. That's what the prodigal did. He came to himself and said, I don't like you either. Let's get out of here. And they went back to the Father. If you'll draw nigh to God, he'll meet you there. He says, but in order to do that, you got to get out of the pen. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned into mourning and your joy to heaviness. Whew. That's because these people are not humble enough. You know, sin makes you pompous and proud because it blinds your mind to reality. The reality is, the closer you get to God, the more you see you're filthy. And so he's saying right here, what you need is you need to clean up and then draw nigh to God. Verse 10, humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. God always takes a man that's low and brings them high, and he takes a man who thinks he's high and he pushes him low. So what are you talking about? Most people are talking about what they don't have, what they do have, or what they could have. The real important one, though, is who has you. Now, that's important for a Christian. Somebody's got me. It's not about what I have or don't have. It's about who has me. Look at it in 1 Samuel 30. 1 Samuel 30, verse 6. David's in a tough spot right here. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spake of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and for his daughters. And David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. That is, nobody wanted to have anything to do with him. Matter of fact, they wanted to kill him. And he says, well, if I'm going to have a good party and a good audience with somebody, it'll have to be me. He encouraged himself in the Lord. There wasn't anybody else there to do it. Sometimes that's what you need to do, is realize God's got you. You and he can have a conversation regardless. Even when somebody's out to kill you. And they were. Now, that didn't mean much to us. We don't understand that. I mean, maybe somebody does somewhere in this world, but I don't. Nobody's trying to come after me to kill me that I know of. But he says right here, even while I'm running for my life, I can count on the fact God's got me. He and I can sit down and have a conversation, and that'll encourage me because nobody else is going to do it. Psalm 42, verse 5. Psalm 42, verse 5. Here's a good conversation to have with yourself. In fact, this one is so good, David uses it 3 times in the Psalms. Psalm 42, verse 5. He says, why art thou cast down, O my soul, and why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him for the help of his countenance. That is, God's got me. He's going to help me. It's his countenance that's going to do this. So why are you so sad and depressed, soul? Wake up. Now that's what you have to do to yourself sometimes. Have that conversation. You notice that conversation has nothing to do with what I can get, what I already got. It's about God and what he's going to fix. Look at it down there in verse 11, I believe it is. Yeah, 42:11. As though we'd not read this verse before, he says, "Why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why art thou disquieted within me? Hope thou in God, for I shall yet praise him, uh, who is the health of my countenance and my God." Hmm. Now, it was God's countenance before that was going to fix him up, and now he says he's not only fixed him up, but he's transferred health to David's countenance. Hmm. You know, the more time you spend with God, the more it shows on your face. It really does. It should show up. Christians should be identifiable. Look at it in the next chapter, Psalm 43. Psalm 43. Psalm 43, verse 5. I think David is a crazy man. He must be the odd father. Because watch, he keeps repeating the same thing and he's talking to himself. But he's a smart odd father. Watch it. Psalm 43, verse 5. Why art thou cast down, O my soul, and why art thou disquieted within me? This is the third time we've seen him say it. And you'll have to repeat this often to your own self. He says, "For I shall yet praise him who is the health of my countenance and my God." It's God who's got you, not you or what your mind imagines. Malachi 2, and we'll be done. Malachi 2, verse 7. Malachi 2, verse 7, he says, "For the priest's lips should keep knowledge." What comes out of your mouth should show knowledge. I don't think most of what comes out of man's mouth is knowledge as far as God's point of view. Most of what comes out of man's mouth is this: look at what I know. It's not about what you know, it's about knowledge from God's point of view. He says, "And they should seek the law at his mouth, for he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts." So question yourself next time you're thinking about it. What are you talking about? When you're mumbling something, when something comes to mind and out of your mouth, ask yourself, is it ministering something for God? We're the children of God, therefore he's in us. And so if something comes out of us, it ought to minister something God intends the message to be.